Remember the ceiling before anesthesia, the plastic smell of the mask, and the voice asking you to count backward. Then the next moment arrives. Not a dream, not a night of sleep, not even darkness, just the next available frame of your life. You were told, gently, that you would simply go to sleep. But that is where the familiar word begins to fail. Natural sleep is an active rhythm of NREM and REM, a living cycle that still senses, still dreams, still moves through its own inner weather. General anesthesia is a drug-induced state that reaches into unconsciousness, amnesia, analgesia, immobility, and autonomic control. In ordinary language, sleep keeps the traveler moving through a dark landscape. Anesthesia removes the road connecting two towns. That is the first answer. What disappeared was not only pain, it was the bridge that normally lets the self narrate time. The missing interval is like a film reel whose middle frames were not merely hidden, but never bound into the narrator's copy. Surgery turns the self into a controlled biological experiment, separating arousal, pain, memory, connected experience, and reportability. If sleep explains anesthesia, why does surgery leave no night behind? The comforting phrase does useful work. It lowers fear, softens the room, and gives the mind a familiar shape to hold. But the biology underneath is not familiar at all. During surgery, the body is not being invited into rest. Sensation has to be controlled, so injury does not become ordinary pain. Movement has to be controlled, so the body does not answer the knife with reflex. Stress responses have to be controlled, so the organism does not flood itself with alarm. Memory formation has to be controlled, so experience does not become a later personal record. Reportable awareness has to be controlled, so there is no continuous witness inside the event. Hold that distinction for a moment. Sleep is a state your brain enters and travels through. Anesthesia is a state medicine builds around you piece by piece, while the body remains under close management. The American Society of Anesthesiologists describes general anesthesia as a medically induced state in which the patient is unconscious without awareness or sensation, while vital functions are continuously monitored and drugs are adjusted. In plain terms, this is not a blanket pulled over the mind. It is a set of hands placed on separate biological levers. The National Institute of General Medical Sciences describes anesthesia as affecting multiple brain and body systems, including unconsciousness, immobility, pain control, and amnesia. That list matters because it breaks the old single-switch story. Think of it less as turning off a lamp and more as lowering the sound, locking the door, muting the alarm, and removing the diary from the table. Quietly precise. One of the strangest levers here is anterograde amnesia. It means experiences may fail to become later autobiographical memory, even if the body was still processing signals in some form. In everyday language, the recorder does not save the file. The event has no stable address inside the story you later call your life. This is why comparing anesthesia to sleep can mislead you. In sleep, a phone may still record background noise, react to alarms, and hold on to fragments of a dream. Under anesthesia, the recorder, the alarm routing, and the storyteller are each damped separately. The house is not empty, but the person who writes the morning report has been disconnected. Think of an operating theater where the stagehands keep working, but the narrator's microphone has been unplugged from the archive. The lungs, the pulse, the blood pressure, the chemical balance, all of it still matters. All of it is watched because the organism is present. But the voice that usually says, "I am here, this is happening to me," is being kept from binding the event into a continuous account. In 1846, the ether dome became the historical scene where this boundary changed. Surgery was transformed because the patient could be removed from the experience itself, not merely have pain softened at the edges. That is the rupture. The body can be intensely managed, while the person cannot form a continuous account of being there. The body can remain on the table, chemically guarded and mechanically watched, while the inner conversation that makes a moment feel owned begins to come apart. That is the correction. Anesthesia is not ordinary sleep, and it is not a simple shutdown. It is a broken agreement. Propofol gives this break a clearer shape. It is used as a fast induction drug, and it enhances GABA A inhibitory signaling, reshaping cortical and thalamocortical dynamics. In plainer language, that inhibition is not a soft blanket laid over the mind. It is pressure on the brain's exchanges until signals that once answered each other can no longer form one shared sentence. A crowded room can still contain voices after the conversation itself collapses. One voice continues near the door, another carries from the back, another answers a question no one else received. The sound still exists. What fails is the common thread. And here, the answer becomes less comfortable, but more useful. The thalamocortical and frontoparietal systems are repeatedly implicated in the loss and return of consciousness under anesthesia. The thalamus and cortex are not mystical seats where the self is hiding. They are routing loops, helping sensation, body signals, attention, and memory access become globally available. For context, think of a city whose lights remain on in separate buildings, while the bridges, the broadcasts, and the central routes stop carrying a single shared map. The buildings are not array of shat, but the city can no longer circulate one coherent report about itself. This is why a still body cannot answer the deepest clinical question. A person can stop moving while neural activity continues. Neural activity can continue while integrated awareness fails. The real question is not whether the brain still contains electrical events. It is whether those events can organize a world that can later be reported as yours. In 2012, the University of Michigan group, led by Mashar, used graph-theoretical EEG during propofol on consciousness and showed reduced feedback connectivity across frontal parietal networks. Graph-theoretical EEG treats brain activity less like one glowing bulb and more like a map of routes, returns, and blocked crossings. The important word here is feedback. A signal moving forward does not create experience on its own, not if the system cannot answer it, compare it, and bind it. Under propofol, that answering structure weakens. The message may still move, but the return path stops holding the room together. A broken return. The broader 2013 Thalamocortical and Integration Review placed this problem inside a larger biological frame. Consciousness depends on integration, not merely activation. Separate notes do not become a melody just because they exist at the same time. They become music when timing and relation make them belong together. This is the main scientific payoff. General anesthesia does not copy sleep, and it does not simply turn the brain off. It disrupts the communication that normally lets sensation become experience, experience become memory, and memory become a reportable self. Clinical EEG-derived monitors, such as BIS, exist because unconsciousness cannot be read directly from a motionless body. Clinicians are not watching a soul switch. They are reading weather patterns over a hidden ocean, trying to infer the state of a system they cannot enter. That hidden ocean is why surgery becomes a controlled experiment in self-continuity. Arousal can be suppressed, pain can be blocked, movement can be prevented, memory can fail to write, reportability can disappear. These functions usually cooperate so tightly that life feels like one continuous narrator. Anesthesia separates them. So the missing interval after the mask is not just empty time. It is evidence that the self is assembled through communication, routed through loops, stabilized by memory, and made public through report. When those routes fail, the organism can remain present, regulated, and intensely managed. The brain is not silent. It is simply unable to agree on a world that can be reported as yours. The clean answer was that anesthesia breaks integration. But if that sounds like one switch turning off, it is still too simple. The inner state is not one locked box. This is the part the word sleep cannot hold. Connected consciousness research draws a colder distinction. Responsiveness, connected consciousness, disconnected consciousness, and memory can all separate. Think of a locked hallway with several doors. Pain, memory, movement, inner imagery, and contact with the room do not all open or close at the same time. One door can be sealed while another is only muffled. The body may not move, and the meaning of that stillness remains uncertain. A memory may be absent, but that absence only tells you no stable story was carried out, not one door. This is why awareness under anesthesia has to be handled without panic and without dismissal. In the 2018 EGM prospective study of 11,785 patients, there were 18 definite or possible awareness cases, including 11 with recall. That number is small enough to resist horror, but precise enough to break the lazy comfort of the word sleep. The rare case still matters because it exposes the machinery. When recall appears, memory, connectedness, and reportability have lined up long enough for the event to leave the operating room. Inside a human voice. In 2014, the UK and Ireland NAP5 StatMit placed reported cases overall at about 1 inches, 19,000. A reported case is not the same as every inner event. It is the fragment that survived drugs, body silence, memory failure, and time, and then became speakable. That is the measurement problem. If one door in the hallway is memory, then counting only what memory returns cannot prove what every other door was doing. The report is crucial. It is not the whole building. Dreaming makes the word sleep fail from the opposite direction. Dreamlike reports under anesthesia often appear around lighter anesthesia or emergence and are usually not surgical awareness. Waking with a strange inner scene is not the same as being connected to the room. It may be the mind stitching fragments as the hallway begins to unlock. So the question changes. Can the body respond? Can the mind form imagery? Can sensation contact the room? Can memory carry anything out? You can lose memory without proving there was nothing. You can be unresponsive without every inner fragment being identical. After surgery, the first clue is often not what you remember. It is what you cannot place. The mask was there, the voice was close, the room still belonged to your body. Then time folded. So the missing time is not empty trivia. It is the trace of a biological interruption. General anesthesia did not give you an ordinary night of sleep. It loosened the agreement that normally lets arousal, body signals, memory, language access, and long-range neural communication feel like one continuous person. Imagine a narrator returning to a desk where the organism kept breathing and the pages kept existing, but the middle chapter was never written in readable ink. The book was not destroyed. The chapter never became carryable. That is the difference. Sleep keeps moving through its own rhythm, and a self that can still drift, dream, and return. Anesthesia is built to interrupt the very machinery that lets experience become yours in the first place. The mask marks the personal edge of that interruption. The ether dome marks its historical edge. The moment surgery changed because medicine learned to remove the patient from the experience, not just soften the pain. Propofol rhythms and EEG connectivity give that same idea a physical shape. The brain is not a single bulb going dark. It is a set of distant rooms that stop sharing a common clock. Then the agreement returns. Arousal rises. Body signals regain their owner. Memory begins accepting new lines. Language comes back and asks why there is no bridge. The answer is quiet. Anesthesia is safe because clinicians control these systems. It is profound. Because every ordinary second of consciousness is a successful assembly you almost never notice. Medicine can pause the narrator without stopping the organism.